taken the time to find the right people, which is one of the biggest challenges when you're first starting out, is who am I going to partner with? Who's willing to partner with me? Who has complementary skill sets? In leadership, I learned a lot from the leaders that I was under, because I've experienced the full spectrum of people that I really did not like working with, to people that I was like, this guy's awesome. I follow him to hell and back. They lead by example. They would never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do. They correct privately and they praise publicly. You want to kind of recruit them to your side and look out for you, and help you execute the mission, as opposed to having to babysit and micromanage them. The best leaders empower their subordinates. They don't subjugate them.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henty. Hello everybody, today we have Brandon Wong. He's a multifamily syndicator as well as a passionate automator. So he will tell us a lot about automation in marketing, but he's also a veteran, and I would really like to hear more about his thoughts on serving the general public, not only in the service but beyond, and the work he's currently doing with veterans. So welcome, Brandon.
Thanks, Hannes. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me onto your show. And I think, having served in the military, I definitely, a lot of what drives me today is serving veterans. So one of the avenues that I've taken to do that is I've designed, I founded a company called Veteran Circles. And it's basically an organization that I started to cultivate veteran entrepreneurs, and offer them sort of an alternative way to continue their service after they get out of the military. And that's through creating value for others. And what it is sort of a marriage between two things I'm very passionate about, which is helping veterans and entrepreneurship. When I was overseas in Iraq, it was funny because I remember, like it was yesterday, it was during a sandstorm, and I had a dusty copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad that I had brought with me. And so,
a dusty copy.
Yeah, and then another book that I had called No Money Down or something like that. It was a real estate investing book, and so I read both of these, and they sort of lit a fire under me, and I was like, had a bit of a Matrix moment where it was revealed to me this whole other world, that's in existence, and how to actually, prosper in a capitalist society, and it really opened my eyes to the possibilities. And when I got back, I was like, yeah, I had a job that was on hold for me when I came back. I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I was like, I didn't have all the answers. I just was like, I'll figure it out, and I went to go start my own business. And so, entrepreneurship is very important to me, and as is helping veterans. So,
is that something that came natural to you, or was that a natural, curious drive? Or, for example, why did you even have those books in Iraq? Did you bring them, or did somebody give them to you? Where did that kind of originally start?
Well, it's one of those things, like when you're going to be away from home, you kind of want to bring home with you, and you want to have some remnants of who you were before you deployed, with you. And I was like, I need to better myself while I'm here, while I'm overseas. And when we have downtime, I need to go work out more, and I need to go and read more. And I had just an underlying desire to get better at investing and just, how to make my money work for me. And that was why I had those books with me. And I had some other interesting things that people kind of made fun of. Like I had a calculus book, like a little thing on math, just to keep those skills sharp for whatever reason. It's just entertaining to me. And then I had like another book on like artificial intelligence, which I thought was super interesting. And how computers like take over the world.
It all sounds a little bit nerdy, right? It's
totally,
like you're this hardcore soldier in Iraq, and then you're reading your calculus books at night.
Yeah, I was infantry, and I remember when I was it wasn't boot camp, it was like the school that comes after boot camp. And my one of my instructors, they go through and they do these inspections in your lockers just to make sure you don't have contraband and stuff. And he's like finding like dirty magazines in other people's lockers and stuff. And and I had a freaking calculus book in there. And he's like, Wong, what the hell is this? And it was interesting. It's an interesting time, but yeah, I'm total nerd, computer nerd. Like you had mentioned, I'm really big into automation and streamlining processes. That's just how my brain works. I see the world as
Yeah.
a matter of logic and workflows and things like that.
And then you go automate them.
Yeah, and I'm like, how can I? And it's funny because it's kind of born of laziness. I'm like, how can I
Yeah.
make this like automated? I don't really feel like doing this.
I remember one of my first bosses told that to me. He's like, you just have to think a little bit more lazy and get the stuff done. And
Yeah,
but most people don't look at it that way. It's like out of laziness, you get creative and have
right.
solutions that just save you work and time.
It really unlocks creativity. There's two things that really unlock creativity in human beings, and I think that's money, like the prospect of wealth, and laziness. Like I don't have to do the work if I can, automate it. So,
Those are the key pillars of creativity.
that's how innovation happens. Is like people are always thinking to themselves, like, how can I do this better? Or at
Yeah.
least in an entrepreneurial mindset. How can I do it more efficiently? How can I do it cheaper, better?
Yeah, I think that rings very much true. I've seen some interviews from Jeff Bezos where he's basically saying, there are a couple of fundamentals when it comes to customer services. Customers always want the next cheapest product, like the same product but cheap.
Right.
They always want it faster, and they want the easiest customer experience.
Right.
And he's like, this will always ring true, and I think that's very much true. And so the question is, how can you use new technologies or other ways of doing things to achieve those things?
Right.
So could you give us an example how, for example, some of the veterans that you currently work with, and I know you go and speak to them, and how do you help them once they come back into normal life after they've been deployed, for example?
So first and foremost, we have we bring that element of camaraderie back that they missed from the military. It's refreshing for them because they can sort of quote unquote let their hair down. They can be themselves and talk how veterans talk. And nobody gets offended.
Yeah.
And then after that, we present them with information and resources. So the vast majority of the people in the veteran circles are business owners themselves. And so a lot of business gets done between the members, the membership. So it's a growth channel for them. It's a marketing channel.
Yeah.
And it's free. I mean, I don't charge people to come to my events or, have exclusivity or anything like that. I just want to get a bunch of veterans in a room and see what happens, and a lot of business gets done through there. And there are people that have done over, $10,000-$20,000 through there. I've raised capital through mine, hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital for my deals. And it's through cultivating those relationships and, building new groups and new networks to be plugged into, So that's kind of how I try to help the veterans, my fellow vets, is that I create an environment that's positive, and uplifting and educational, and it's not a nonprofit. Most people think Veteran Circles is a nonprofit. It's not. It's just a social enterprise. We have a mission to help veterans, and we just happen to make money doing it.
I mean, I think not everything that's good needs to be nonprofit,
Right.
but I think there is maybe an added benefit overall if something is a nonprofit. But I think it's even much more powerful if private sector just embraces being good or doing good.
Exactly. I totally agree with you on that. And there are something like 20,000 veteran nonprofits out there that have a veteran focus. I'm like, they don't need 20,001. So why should I make mine into one,
So you just said you also raised some capital in there. When you first approached your first real estate syndication, how did you overcome those maybe mind blocks that somebody experiences? Like, for example, we usually talk about raising money, and you coming from Iraq, that was probably not one of the skills you had with you already.
Right.
So how did that journey progress in your mind? How were you confident enough that you could actually do this?
So I know other people were doing it. So I know that the pathway was there. I just needed to follow the model and learn from others who are more experienced from me. And full disclosure, my first capital raise was just terrifying. like absolutely terrifying. I had no idea, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, don't worry. I get that answer quite a lot. That they're like sleepless for 60 days and like,
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
yeah,
Just to be real here, and it wasn't 60 days for me. It was like 2.5 weeks because we're invited late into a deal, and they're like, we have a so and so $1 million gap. Can you help us close it? And without knowing exactly how I was going to do it, I just said yes. And I had my network of people I had already been talking to, and I had some sales experience in the past in building frameworks and how to communicate my ideas clearly and articulate, the value that I can bring with the deal. And once I
yeah,
kind of dialed that in and got it a couple times and received those first couple of wires, like I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. This is very doable. And then through that process, I developed a methodology that I share with other people. It's a system I built called Smart Syndicator, and people, they can become members and basically utilize the exact same systems that I used to raise the money. And it was a great learning experience and an opportunity for me to create value with a system like that.
if you want, you can go a little bit into the details of Smart Syndicator
Sure.
and how it works. I'm also not familiar with it.
Sure. Basically, it's a complete training platform slash CRM slash automation tool that allows us to
Yeah.
very efficiently and effectively communicate with investors, to ensure that we only get on the phone with people that they know the details of the deal, so you're not getting into a cold conversation, and B, they know the
Yeah.
minimum investment, so there is no awkward, oh, crap, I don't have the money for that. They know those
Yeah.
two things before they get on the phone with me. So it's almost like not even a sales conversation. It's just answering questions at that point. And by really studying and understanding the underwriting and the aspects and details of the deal, and being able to communicate what you know about the market, where the data came from, the experience level of the team, and it basically hones in on the 4 Ps. I call it the 4P method of raising money. It's the people, the property, the plan, and the projections. And if you can articulate all 4 of those, why the people know what they're doing, why the property is good and in a great location, the plan, how you're going to execute the business plan, clearly communicating the whole thing, and the CapEx plan,
Yeah.
and then validating your projections with the 5-year cash flow model, and telling people why you think rent growth is going to be 5% this year, 4% this year, 3% this year, and here's the data where we got it from this CoStar that has they spend probably millions of dollars doing their research to give us this data, and that's what we base
Yeah.
the foundation of our underwriting. So all of those things, if you hit all 4 Ps, then you're much more likely to convert the person into an investor that you're talking to.
Is that a tool you personally built for your own needs with the objective of eventually kind of giving it to the community of
Yeah.
real estate syndicators?
It is. It is some. If you've ever read the book Rework, they're like, build a product for yourself, because if you need it,
Yeah.
I guarantee other people need it too, and they're willing to
Yeah.
pay you for it. And because of the number of zeros involved with the problem that I solve, I can charge more for
Yeah.
it. So it just made sense for me, and it just makes me a better syndicator every time I coach somebody through their first capital raise. Every time we have a successful closing, I can improve my system, and B, I get a
Yeah.
feeling of fulfillment to see that this person is developed and they've learned something from me.
I think that's a great part of having like not only a thriving business, but a fulfilled version of a thriving business,
Right.
because you're actually solving not only your own problem, but someone else's problem.
Yeah.
And you help them close like a very crucial
Right.
gap.
I love seeing the light
Yeah.
bulb go off for people, and
Yeah.
I love seeing the fear leave their eyes. Like, there's a big difference between the first phone call I have with them and the one after they get that first wire to come in. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And the funniest thing, what I've seen is that people have a lot more money in their databases than they think they do. They just don't have the tools to extract it correctly, appropriately. It's almost like mining for what, like drilling for oil. If you don't have a drill,
Yeah.
how are you going to get to the oil? You know?
Yeah, like the more advanced technology gets, the more oil we're actually able to extract out of the same well.
Right. And I really enjoy it, and the coaching aspect of it is really fascinating to me. I'm always trying to improve myself, and every time we do a raise, like man, it'd be really cool if I got a reminder if this person has been in this stage in the pipeline for 3 days and I haven't contacted them. I'm like, bing, okay, I have my team build it in, and now they get a reminder in 3 days if the person has requested an offering memorandum and hasn't received follow-up communication. And so we've sort of templatized the whole process.
Is the CRM something that you build on your end or something you integrated?
It is something that I work with a team of developers, and I build on a platform that they've built, but I've basically re-engineered everything for syndication. So it's 100% designed for syndicating. We've developed a similar product based on the same technology and infrastructure, but for generating tenant leads for properties that are struggling with occupancy. And then not only generating the leads, but also consolidating their existing marketing channels into one place, and then creating a system of accountability for their leasing agents to make sure that their leasing agents are doing their job and they're doing it well. And I end up with that particular model. I train the leasing agents like, hey, here's your script and your framework. You need to use it. You need to call the leads within 5 minutes of them coming in. Like, there's a very systematic way to actually get people to sign a lease.
Yeah.
It's not always as easy as somebody walking in and they're going to sign a lease, And so that's a byproduct of this. So it's just an additional, way to use it, leverage it.
Yeah, talking about, for example, when people sign a lease, I mean, it's a very short window when people are actually a hot lead.
Exactly.
I mean, if there's not a sense of urgency to return those calls or emails, they very quickly turn into cold leads.
Right. And the problem is the owners of the building paid for that lead. They paid somebody. They paid apartments.com. They paid Zillow or whatever system they're using to get renter leads. And a lot of times, I like the analogy I like to use is it's like a pipeline, and there's a bunch of leaks in that pipeline. And by the end of it, very little water actually gets to the end of it. So what my system does is it plugs up all the leaks and then builds a system of accountability to make sure that people are, working the leads. And then we introduce new flows of water into the pipeline through Facebook advertising.
So what happens if a leasing agent doesn't do that job? Like, is there something that pops up on your end, for example, as the GP, and you get a notice that the system is not worked well?
So we have an analytics dashboard that shows how quickly the phone call was made. We do have the capacity to call or to record the calls with permission from whoever's picking up. And then depending on the state, because every state has their own laws around recording phone calls. So we do disclose, and then we do have automation that can notify. It basically tells the leasing agent, like, hey, a lead just popped in, you need to call them. Or we can actually force it, the system, to basically, it calls the leasing agent and says, hey, you got a lead, we're connecting you right now, and it will call the lead and then connect them. So it makes it dummy proof,
How was that received by the leasing agent? It's like, I'm in the middle of lunch, I'm getting a call, and I'm forced
that particular feature we haven't used yet on a leasing agent, but if we need to, we can.
So on some of the properties that you already implemented this, I'm sure that you were able to close the gap of empty apartments significantly, right? Because if you have such an efficient system on closing in on the leads and actually getting back in a timely manner, right? Without making too many rent concessions.
Correct. Now, there's usually something that we need to offer if it's depending on the property. But we might do, a $250 credit on their second month's rent. We might do half month's rent free on the second month. It just depends on the
Yeah.
property. Some properties don't really need to have an incentive. It just depends on the property and the market. And one of the
Yeah.
things one of the additional, problems that we can help identify is if there's a systemic problem with that property, no amount of marketing is going to correct that. No amount of lead generation is going to correct that. We need to stop the bleeding or stop the leaking at the property. Make sure that, they're putting a good product out there. They're not. It's not a
Yeah.
D-class slumlord, type property, because I can't really do anything for
Yeah.
them. It has to be a
Yeah.
quality product that fits what we're offering.
Yeah. Do you know Gary Vee? Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah,
So yeah, he sometimes speaks about that when he has clients that want him to market one of their products, and eventually, when he used all of his resources, he just tells them, your product just
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I can't fix.
Can't do anything
What
about
do you
it.
call it? Just that you can't fix a foundational problem. You gotta tear it.
Yeah.
You gotta. Well, I mean, not with marketing. You have to get your hands dirty and go. You might need to fire somebody. You might need to hire somebody at the
Yeah.
company or at the property. Um, and
I guess in that scenario, you have a real value add scenario first, where you have to actually implement
yeah,
the business plan,
exactly.
and then you can fix the lead.
Like, for instance, if there's a severe crime problem at your property and you're not mitigating that, you're not hiring off-duty cops to come by and clean it up, like, no amount of marketing is going to fix that, because your property will develop a reputation, and I can't
Yeah.
overcome that.
There's only so much you can do in the lead funnel.
Right.
If people walk into an obvious kind of disastrous apartment, there's
Yeah, they're just going to walk in and walk out.
yeah. I mean, I've seen it here in New York when I was apartment shopping last year. And some of the apartments, I'm just like, there's
Right.
nothing to look at here. I'm like, I'm right back out. Thank you.
Well, and part of what makes syndication such a beautiful business model is you can come in and make something that's jacked up into something really nice. You can
Yeah.
you can totally turn a property around.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's also one of the most rewarding pieces of syndication is that you actually go in and create value for the tenants
Right.
and give them a genuinely
Yeah.
better place to stay at.
Exactly. There's a really big syndicator out here in Dallas Fort Worth who he actually got an award from the city. I can't remember what city exactly, but he went in and bought 8 D-class properties and just turned them all around. And then he made a ton of money doing it. And he cleaned up the whole neighborhood because he just bought all the apartments in that area and renovated them and brought, did better background screening, background checks and everything.
I think I know who you're talking about, and there used to be something like what did he call it, the pizza delivery test?
Yeah. Will the
Yeah,
does the bus not stop there, or
yeah. Bus doesn't stop, and the pizza delivery
Yeah.
guys won't go there. It looks like you actually working multiple streams at the same time. I mean,
Right.
you came back and you built multiple different platforms that actually allow you to create a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, you're working with the veterans,
Mm-hmm.
and on the other hand, you have basically two platforms
Right.
that really help create more value.
The first one we went over was the Smart Syndicator. It's our capital raising platform.
Yeah, right. The smart.
That's sort of our
syndicator.
flagship product. It's what
Yeah.
I feel like creates the most value. But I mean, if you have a property that's struggling with occupancy, and I call it
Yeah.
my tenant magnet program, that can bring.
Tenant magnet. I like the names
you.
you have. It's like
I
tenant
have a marketing
magnet.
background.
I mean, straightforward, but at the same time, it just sounds good.
And it's just one of those things that I leverage in building new relationships, because particularly when you're a newer syndicator starting out, there's a lot of people trying to syndicate, trying to get into GP in their
Yeah.
first deal, and it's like you've got to ask yourself the question: what value can I bring to the table in a potential partnership? Can I bring the money? Can I bring asset management experience? What can I bring? Can I underwrite? And so I feel like the piece that I choose to focus on is the marketing aspect and the capital raising aspect. I do have a technical background, and I'm okay at asset management and underwriting. But I've partnered with people that their skill set is superior to mine in those areas, and I'm just like, you're our senior underwriter because I'm not doing any deals unless you underwrite them, and it makes sense because I've taken the time to find the right people, which is one of the biggest challenges when you're first starting out is who am I going to partner with? Who's willing to partner with me, who has complementary skill sets. And so that's a process in the beginning. We could maybe do a whole other podcast or video on that, just how to find the right people.
Yeah, I think that's a very crucial piece to the puzzle. I think for LPs, it's how do I identify the right GP, and then for GPs, it's how do I identify the other syndicators that are actually capable of kind of covering my blind spots, because everybody has their set of strengths, and it's a team sport at the end of the day.
Right. And I think it's beneficial for newer syndicators to partner up and have like people of a similar skill set or a similar experience level in the beginning, and just combine forces to get into their first deal, because then they can go and find the experience, they can go and find the money to come in and help them. But yeah, that's just a tip for newer syndicators and how to get into their first deal.
So when it comes to partnerships, what are you looking for in the people that you would preferably partner with?
Yeah,
Like, what are some of the key pillars that you're looking for in those people?
that's a great question. Similar value systems, so people that you get along with that have integrity. What they say they're going to do, they always do it. Have a similar risk tolerance. So if that's out of alignment, when you go to underwrite deals, it makes sense for this person but not for this person, because one has a higher risk tolerance, one just wants to get into a deal for the sake of getting into their first deal, and they're willing to stretch further on the underwriting, and it's better to identify that up front before you get into try to get into a deal together, or you have an LOI on accepted on a property. But those are some of the things. So similar value systems, similar risk tolerances. What was the last one? Good communication skills. Like, do you communicate well with them? Do they answer text messages promptly? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are they respectful? Are they respectful to you and the potential vendors that you might be working with? Those are all good, and those are all things you can sort of identify up front. Not always, but very, very quickly I've learned who I like to work with and who I don't, based on my interactions with them.
Yeah, I feel like especially when people rush, when there is this sense of urgency to just close the deal quickly, that usually kind of turns me off a bit.
Yeah, and it's got to be the right deal. Everybody needs to feel comfortable with it. Because if you don't feel comfortable, how are you going to communicate to the investors that you're comfortable with it? You'll be living a lie at that point. So that's big. That's a big deal for me.
So, as somebody that is taking the money from passive investors, how do you think about protecting the investor's best interest while also making sure that you're, for example, keeping the tenant's best interest in check?
Right.
Like, not just cutting corners on the tenants, but at the same time creating value across the entire board, from the investors or to the staff on the property as well as for the tenants.
The biggest thing there would be to verify expenses with a competent property manager, and really dial in your CapEx budget so that you can budget for all the things, the amenities, the upgrades, the things that your tenants want. Budgeting that correctly up front. That way you don't have to cut corners when it comes time. And building in a contingency, depending on the size of the property, that might be 5 to 10% of the CapEx budget. And just having that ready if you need it, because things happen on a property. It's almost guaranteed. It's almost up there with death and taxes. Something's going to go wrong on the property. And then,
it's almost,
so you need to have a contingency to tap into. That way you're not sacrificing the investors and you're not sacrificing the tenants.
So for a passive investor, what do you think they should look for in a syndicator?
Similar questions to what I look for in a GP is do their values align with mine? Are they going to run this property like a slumlord and just try to squeeze every penny out of it? Or hey, that might be cool for some LPs, but we try to implement what's called a resident appreciation program on every single property that we're a part of, so that we're enhancing their experience. Where it might be something as simple as a grab and go breakfast for the tenants once in a while, like during the month, or bringing in a nonprofit organization that can do lunches for the kids during the summertime.
Yeah.
Or it could be activities for the kids, swimming lessons. If you have a pool on the property, there's nonprofits out there that you can partner with and bring them in and enhance the property. Another way we like to look at deals, it's called the 3PL. I'm always all about these systems and just acronyms.
Yeah, I can tell you have names and acronyms for everything.
It's called triple bottom line. It's looking at any kind of business venture or investment decision through 3 different lenses. How is this going to impact people? How is it going to impact profitability? And how's it going to impact the planet? So, look at water conservation. Look at different ways you could be more efficient with resources on the property, and so you can try to have a positive impact on all 3. It sounds idealistic, but there are measures you can take to make it realistic and make it, something viable.
I feel like out of so many different investment vehicles that I've looked in over the last decade, in multifamily, it's actually one where most of those things ring true, where you actually can, create value for people, look out for the people, while at the same time, you actually improve the property and you take care of the planet in terms of water conservation.
For sure. It sounds kind of yuppie, but I grew up around, was it Captain Planet? And so I'm always about, recycling and, trying to be efficient with resources, being a good steward of resources that you have.
And I guess, taking consideration where we're headed in terms of eventually 10 billion people on the planet, I think we need to get or become a little bit more resourceful overall.
Right. And we'll figure it out. I think that people are very, there's a lot of ingenuity. There's a lot of really smart people out there. It's just a matter of how do you align them and motivate them, and bring resources in for them. And part of this partnership that I've built, we're, Guardian Multifamily. We have a Guardians for Good program, and essentially 10% of our profits would go to those types of activities. It could be nonprofits that support the homeless, because sometimes, people, if they get evicted from an apartment, they need somewhere to go, some type of resource.
Yeah.
And then something to support veterans. Just that's a passion of mine. And then something to support maybe first responders, maybe families that have lost a loved one, like a police officer or a firefighter, and just allocating resources from our investment practices to help them.
Yeah, that's great. And again, this is something that I feel like is so much in the multifamily real estate space. It's not an elbow society part. It's very much people that want to help and extend their table,
Right.
And share the bounty with others. And I think that's a common thread that I see, that many of the syndicators, they already are very happy with their lifestyle, and they're at a point where they really want to give back in so many different ways. And that's one of the things that really draw me to the space, because people genuinely want to help.
Right. And obviously there's exceptions, but I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, there's always exceptions, but I feel like there's there's a tendency here where there's a lot of this going on, and especially living in New York for the last decade, I don't see, oh, I mean, there is a lot of it in New York, but I think when it comes to finances and business here, it's a little bit more of a shark
Right.
mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sort of a breath of fresh air when I joined an ecosystem out here with the Brad Summerall group. Just being around high caliber people, like, and the vast majority of them that I've met are, they want to do some good, and
Yeah.
very intelligent, very, resourceful people. And it's just been enjoyable to get to know people like that, and people helping each other out. I like to see it, and it's been a great experience so far.
So, Brandon, you're really just in the first third of your life, going where life expectancy is
Mm-hmm.
headed. So, what do you see in the making, like midterm to like medium long term for yourself? Like, I think you quite made a shift from coming back from the military, going into business
Mm-hmm.
ownership, actually having multiple streams, I would say,
Right.
of very successful things working for yourself. Where do you want to take this?
I mean, have you ever read the book? Shoot, it was Built to Sell. I've started building companies in a way that to make them sellable in the future, make them valuable. And basically,
Yeah.
it's for the future, I just foresee things kind of snowballing and building bigger and bigger businesses and selling them and building bigger and bigger ones, and just increasing the
What?
impact.
Why not build one that grows big? What is the intention behind keeping selling it
Yeah.
and snowballing? Or you just like that initial stage of going through the creative part, building it, and then giving it to somebody who then maybe enjoys the business growth part of it.
I mean, I'm sort of a creator. Like I like to start things and create new things. That's the part that
Yeah,
gets me
fair.
most excited.
Yeah.
And I may not sell my multifamily business or my software slash consulting business, but I like to have the ability to. And I think
Yeah.
the more I can do, the bigger of an impact I can have. I don't want to be one of the investors who waits till they're 90 to start trying to have an impact, or like you look back on your life
Yeah.
and you're just, man, what did I do? Is anybody going to even remember that I was here? You know? And then that's when people start
Are
donating.
you
That's when
referring to
people
Warren
start,
Buffett?
getting active in the community. I'm like, you don't need to wait till you're about to die to, to start making changes and having an impact, even if it's not that big of an impact in the beginning.
I think especially let's say you just put it all in your will and then it's literally handed over once you're dead, then there's like you don't even enjoy the
Right,
part of giving, which I think makes life very very
right,
joyful, to experience the giving and the receiving part
right.
of things. And so when it comes to multifamily, what do you have on the map next?
So I'm looking to acquire more. I want to have another 500 or so units this year in my portfolio.
Yeah.
And then next year ramp that up, double that, because that is the nature of multifamilies. It's scalable. There's no limit once you know how to raise money, and you can raise for your next deals. It just becomes a matter of, okay, what do I, how many can I get under contract that meet my criteria, and then we've got a system in
Yeah.
place. I'll probably end up hiring people to help me raise capital, and just develop a sales team that can do a lot of the outreach for like 506c type investing.
Yeah. So you want to mainly focus in on accredited investors in the future?
Yeah, in the near future, I think there is something to be said about doing 506bs, because it's sort of like helping Main Street invest, um,
Yeah.
and it creates sort of a bridge for people that maybe they're not accredited yet, but can still get in on some amazing deals and returns.
It looks like the SEC is about to change or
Mm-hmm.
adjust the rules. I mean, they've thrown out a very high number, around 10 million for
Mm-hmm.
accredited investors. Currently, it's 1 million, and it looks like if you kind of clean it up for
Mm-hmm.
inflation, that 1 million would technically reflect just below 3
Mm-hmm.
million right now. So I think that again kind of throws out the question. We're probably going to see more 506bs in the future because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the right now
Yeah.
accredited investors will actually be not part of this new
And you can do a
definition.
lot with a B. The raise is unlimited, right? It's just now you have to focus more on cultivating your sphere of influence as opposed to, I mean, you would need to do that either way, but because you wouldn't be able to accept money from as many accredited investors because the requirements went up for that. I see deals getting done all the time with 506Bs, so that's not an issue. It's just we would just need to pivot and adjust our business model accordingly. And one of the things to consider
Yeah.
too is that somebody had mentioned, I've seen a post recently on this. I don't know if we're looking at the same thing, but half of Congress would no longer meet an accredited requirement. So half of Congress would be
That's
would be
always a
locked out
really
of.
interesting point. You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to cut in
So
their
I could see
own.
some pushback from Congress coming on, raising that bar, because it would lock half of them out of really good deals that rich people get into.
But what's your general sentiment anyway? I've had a very kind of vivid discussion the other day with one of my friends who's like old school in New York finance, and he's like very much into that the accredited investor rule should be established. But the way I look at it is just the definition doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's just a number, and they assume that somebody who has $1 million net worth is smart. And I think we've all seen enough ball players or some kind of artists blow their money just because they had big checks. It doesn't mean they have any financial
Right.
sophistication.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it should and part of it too could be because they added that rule to 506C where you can be accredited without meeting the net worth and income requirements by simply taking a test and
Yeah.
passing a test. So that might be part of the impetus. Like they created this sort of backdoor to become accredited by taking an exam and passing a test. So that might be
Yeah, I think that's a very good move to give people a door in because I think anybody who is sophisticated and knowledgeable and educated should have
right.
access.
I completely agree. And
Like, even if you did it privately, if you put in the effort and educated yourself over multiple years, you should have access to those
right.
kind of deals. That's at least my
And I
personal
think
take.
too, the $1 million thing is more a protection of like how much damage can you absorb if a deal goes south, is more so than how
Yeah.
intellectual you are, how good you are at underwriting deals. They're just trying to protect people from themselves from making huge losses for themselves.
But I'm still allowed to walk into
Yeah,
Las
like
Vegas.
yeah, exactly.
No,
Yeah, you can
nobody
still go to
stops me.
Vegas and blow all your money in one night on
I
stupid
can bet
things.
my
Yeah.
house in Vegas. Nobody stops me.
But $50,000 loss could be very different between two different people. That could be somebody's entire life
Oh,
savings,
yeah,
or
that's for
that could be
sure.
somebody else's weekend
Yeah.
money, that they spend on alcohol. So
Who spends $50,000 on a weekend on
buying bottle
alcohol?
service,
I
buying
mean,
tables and
yeah,
partying.
yeah,
And
yeah, I get
I've
it.
seen some big
People
bills
do
come
it.
out of. I
People
used
do
to
it.
live in Las Vegas, and there's some nice, 5 and 6 figure bills that come out of those nightclubs.
It's just insane
sure.
sometimes. There's people who play at a different
Exactly.
level.
Tell me a little bit about your journey as a GP, and like I know, last time we spoke, you were looking at a couple of deals in the space.
Yeah, so we're also mainly focusing on
Okay.
capital raising, which is very interesting because I mean, we're not as technical as you, but we also build the system for ourselves to keep the communication kind of in a standard operating
Very cool.
procedure. Because one of the things we notice, we have a lot of conversations with people where they weren't educated to the degree yet where it actually made sense to
Right.
take out the time of the day to speak to them, while we're always encouraging to speak with everybody. But I think there's a certain learning curve that needs to be closed first in order to actually have a sensible conversation about
For sure.
raising funds. So we've been building that on our back end and kind of just build a little bit more of a sophisticated funnel
Right.
for ourselves to make sure that by the end we actually have sophisticated and accredited investors in the pipeline that
Very
we
cool.
speak to. Because I think once you put in the effort, and you're a lot more technical than we are, but I think once you put in the effort and you kind of streamline
Mhm.
that process, everything becomes a little
For
bit more
sure.
easier. But I don't have that in-house team like you that build an entire CRM
We had
platform around
I
it.
have a marketing background, marketing automation background. I've generated like tens of
Yeah,
thousands of long form leads for like mortgage and real estate professionals before. So it's
yeah.
basically an adaptation of the technology. Um,
Hey, you never shared that part with me. That's a very crucial piece to
yeah.
the experience.
So I've done a lot of lead generation, a lot of online sales funnels and things like that. And I've basically built my team from scratch that didn't know anything, and now they know how to build funnels. And that's been a game changer for me is outsourcing and hiring and helping other people
Yeah.
kind of gain the skills so that they can help me scale.
How did you go from feeling that you don't know what you're doing to actually leading a team in what you're doing? Do you have some experience maybe from the army in leading people?
So I was in the Marine Corps, 2003 to 2011, and in leadership, I learned a lot from the leaders that I was under because I've experienced the full spectrum of people that I really did not like working with, to people that I was like, this
Yeah.
guy's awesome. I follow him to hell and back, and a couple of the things that,
What's the
yeah,
distinction? Like, what are the core qualities of the people that you would actually follow through hell and
well,
back?
they lead by example. They would never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do. They correct privately and they praise publicly, which is very important. Because if you embarrass your subordinates, they tend to get disenfranchised, and you want to kind of recruit them to your side and look out for you, and help you execute the mission, as opposed to having to babysit and micromanage them. So the best
Yeah.
leaders empower their subordinates. They don't subjugate them.
Yeah, I very much agree on that. I think the more
Yeah.
micromanagement there is, the more resentment in the long term, and I think a business can't thrive on that or an
Yeah, if
organization.
you're trying to teach somebody something, um, you need to let them have ownership of the thing. Like, if they do it a little bit differently, that's okay, as long as the mission's getting done, and it's reproducible. Then, like when I build SOPs in my business, which is just a slang for a
Yeah,
checklist, I have them build it. Like I'll record a video, like a Loom video of me doing the thing, and like, hey, here, build an SOP out of this, and then now they own it. Now they can replicate the process that I just shared with them.
so you actually build a system of Loom videos that kind of builds the foundation of what they're
Right.
supposed to do, and I guess also if somebody doesn't work out, you immediately have
Exactly.
training material for
So
somebody else.
I
Yeah,
basically built that. I built a small library for a level one analyst, and when we hire an analyst to help us do like a first pass on the underwriting, we basically recorded a video
yeah,
training series on how to do that, and then built a checklist out of it. And then now that I could put them through 2 hour training, and then with a little bit of help afterward, obviously answering questions, tightening up the.
I feel like you right here you have another business going. This is something else that you can.
Yeah, I try not to do too much at the same time, but it's just built into Smart
Yeah,
Syndicator. I put the video training series
yeah,
for my own VAs, to help train them, because
yeah.
man, if you try to do that yourself and then you have to hire another one, it's just a time suck. So I always say just do it once and record it, you know, and then leverage that, use that as a training platform for your next VA.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So where do you find your best VAs?
They're all over the world, but in particular, um, I had luck in the Philippines, as well as
Yeah, me
for
too.
more customer client facing VAs. I look in Central America, so like Colombia, Venezuela. Venezuela, you can offer those people opportunities that they would never have outside of the country, because the economy is so jacked up over there,
Yeah, and they earn a hard currency with you.
and there's not a lot of jobs. So like you can offer them a job, calling people. you'll get bilingual. They speak perfect English, and you can have them making phone calls for you.
I find that part quite amazing. I mean, Tim Ferriss wrote about it in the 4 Work Week already, but I think it took a little bit of time till it triggered into my mind how powerful it is to have that available at the
Right.
fingertips. And it actually creates real opportunity for people that live in
Right.
rather remote places.
You have an internet connection. I can work with you. You have a computer and internet connection. I can hire you.
Yeah. Well, I still
Yeah,
need to
exactly.
speak English.
And there's systems to it. Password management, VPNs. Like my assistant in the Philippines, I've had her for a couple of years, and she's to the point where she can anticipate my needs before I ask for them. In a lot of cases, or I'll ask for,
That
I
gets
will
scary, huh?
request something, and then she'll do the thing, and then give me what I needed on top of it without asking for it. And
Yeah.
she's VPN into my computer right now. She's working on my computer, so it creates it's sort of like almost a office environment in my own home office.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. That you just throw it together from the entire world. And it also means that, I mean, not only do these people have a real opportunity to earn, like I've seen some of the creative workers that we use, for example, for some of the music or the
mm-hmm.
design work. And no matter where they sit, it doesn't matter. Once they're at a certain level and they kind of proven themselves to the market, they charge the same as somebody in the US.
Right.
And I think that's very empowering for them because it means somebody who lives maybe in the suburbs of Mumbai, can completely transform the entire
Yeah.
family's lifestyle just because they found a connection through the internet and were able to create a lot of value for someone
Right.
abroad.
And
And I find that amazing. At the same time, I feel like we get to touch those people. And actually, just yesterday, one of my previous VAs from the Philippines wrote me a very, very nice note about how I, just by the kind of mindset that trickled through our communication, empowered her to eventually start her own small business. And that really touched me. Like that's like, I just thought that was amazing
right.
because she didn't really have anybody speaking life into her in her
Mm-hmm.
own upbringing. So for her to have the ability to connect with us
Mm-hmm.
through the internet and find like-minded people that are looking to grow together, I find that amazing. And I actually think that despite people thinking that there's so much going wrong in the world, at the same time we live in the most opportunity-rich times
Right.
ever.
And cost of living is different in different countries. So people who don't understand that tend to assume that you're taking advantage of somebody, when in fact they get a salary that's probably higher than most of the people in the country by working with you.
Yeah,
There's a little city in Ecuador that's like has like their highest percentage of engineers in the country, and a buddy of mine hired like somebody on his development team. I think it was like for like $700 a month, but the guy had an electrical engineering degree, spoke perfect English, and he said, "I'll do that for $700 a month. I think that's a good deal." And so the guy defined his own salary like in that situation. It wasn't, you know, here's the offer, take it or leave it. It was that's what he requested. The cost of living is just different
yeah.
there, and they're getting paid in U.S. dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely there's something to that. For example, the average wage, don't quote me on the number, but I think in India is around $2,000. And obviously you can't really rent anything livable with that money in a major metropole like
Right.
Mumbai. But there, one of the guys we worked with for
Mm-hmm.
funnel systems, he actually lives outside of Delhi and he charges US dollars. Like we paid him was like probably
Mm-hmm.
5K, which sounds crazy. The first time I thought about it, okay, I know India rather well because I spent an entire
Mm-hmm.
year over there. I was like, we're wiring a guy 5K who literally sits in a suburb of Delhi, but he's creating that
Mm-hmm.
level of value. So why
Right.
wouldn't we?
It's just the value exchange, and what how much are you going to make off of it? That's what I think wealthy people, the way they look at money is what will this earn me, not what is this costing me.
And I think that's a very very crucial piece to the puzzle. It's like you wanna save yourself time. So I always say, like, I'm happy to spend that kind of money if it saves me a month in learning,
Right.
for example. Like if I can cut down 4 weeks of
Mm-hmm.
learning by going to a 1 weekend seminar and it costs me two
Right.
grand or something, yeah, why
Yeah, it
not?
becomes a question.
But that was a real
Yeah,
shift.
it really becomes a question of what is your time worth to you? What is your hourly rate? Because that's
Yeah.
what it's costing you to sit there and fiddle with funnels and try to figure them out.
I just read an article in New York Times the other day. It was two people. I think he was a brewer and she was a teacher, and they rented a house in the midst of the pandemic in Brooklyn for, I think, $3,000. And that was already pushing it for them, but they thought if they lock it in at
Mm-hmm.
3,000, they will have a nice place to stay after the pandemic. Obviously, we as landlords know that eventually the market
Mm-hmm.
normalizes, and if the lease is up, you eventually bring the lease back to
Right.
market value. And the landlord wanted to increase, in that particular case, back to market meant $1,000. So from 3 to 4, and they were like, "Oh, we
Mm-hmm.
can't do it." They negotiated to 600, or the landlord offered them 600 rather, and they were like, "Oh, we can't do it." And I was like, if between the two of you, you can't bring up the 600, you should have never gotten that place in the first place.
Right.
And then on top of it, they decided to move out of town in the suburb, which adds an additional 40 hours per month in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the commute. And I was like, if you have a minimum wage in New York's $15, that's the
Yeah.
$600 right there. So I just thought that's a
Mm-hmm.
mindset move, because I'm pretty sure in that time that they're now spending on the bus, they could have created the value to cover their
Right.
rent if they would have gotten creative around
Right.
it.
But that requires thought, and thought is the hardest work. That's why so few
Yeah,
people do it. They'd
maybe, yeah.
rather just be told what to do, or.
I honestly think that business is very much more a
Yeah.
mindset thing than a how thing, and that's one of the reasons why I'm always super interested in how people think, and who nurtured their mindset in their personal journey, because it's just not natural for people to move through fear and move through
Mm-hmm.
rejection and dream big, unless they have a certain
Right.
mindset, because it's just easier to play it safe and collect a paycheck than stepping through those levels of
Mm-hmm.
objection and education.
For sure. And
Yeah.
I think Rich Dad Poor Dad should be mandatory reading in high school. But then that would sort of
Yeah.
do in the
Yeah.
education
And
system. So like, that's not going to happen.
I always say that what is it? The Richest Man in Babylon, it's 96 pages in the
Mhm.
English version. I'm like, come on, anybody can read that in
Right.
school, right?
And it's written in a way that's very easy to understand, and
Yeah.
it's almost the common denominator whenever I talk to a real estate investor how they got started. They're like, "Oh, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad," and I was like, "Oh, me too."
Yeah, it's probably the most recommended book
Yeah.
out there when it comes to real
People
estate
either
investing.
love Robert Kiyosaki or they hate him. But you can't knock the impact he's had on the world. Positive impact.
Yeah, and the crazy part is also in how many languages the book got
Yeah.
translated. I mean, it's not only US; it's
Right.
global. Like when I'm in the streets in Mumbai, they sell it on the corner. It's fake copies, but it's they sell it for less than $1. You can get a fake copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I find so stunning about the times we live in, that all of the knowledge is actually available, because we were talking about internet connection. I would argue that almost every single teenager in the United States has a
Mm-hmm.
smartphone, or the majority of them, and they have internet access. The question is just, where do they allocate their time?
You're gonna be on TikTok, or you're gonna be on some educational YouTube videos or something.
Yeah, I don't. I haven't spent a lot of time on TikTok. Maybe there's some educational part to it.
There's not. No, I'm just.
There's not.
There might be. I
Okay,
just you know I've never seen it.
so maybe that means there's a lot of attention
Hmm.
on TikTok right now, and you and me should start creating that kind of content
Yeah,
on TikTok.
for sure.
Well, Brandon, it was a pleasure having you today. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you share with us. And I mean, you're working on so many little projects that I find super curious because I'm not as technical as you. And I really wish you best of luck. And I know there's a lot in the pipeline for you. And I'm looking to have you back one day to hear what else you're building and creating.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.